A loss for the president in court today as the Supreme Court rejects an emergency appeal by the Trump administration to allow President Trump to deploy the National Guard to Chicago. The administration had asked the High Court to weigh in on this, and after a district court judge blocked the deployment in October, the appeals court declined to overturn that ruling, so it left the block in place. Not a final ruling, it's important to point out on this case, however. It could affect other lawsuits, though, over the president's National Guard deployments. 3 conservative justices did dissent: Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, and Neil Gorsuch. So that was in from the Supreme Court. Let's bring in immigration attorney Veronica Cardenas now, former prosecutor for ICE as well. Good to have you back on the show, Veronica. You know, you combine this. There was a case recently as well where some of the Trump deportations were found to be illegal, where we've had questions about how the president's immigration policy, and the Supreme Court ruling is, I guess, a crime crackdown as well as immigration with the use of the Guard, but how would courts rule and what role would courts play? And I think it'll be a story going into next year as well. What would you say about all this?
I think that is an interesting point, because what we're seeing at the federal court level is that they are not so kind to the way that this administration has been rewriting policy, has been rewriting traditional laws as they stand. So as we saw with the deportations using the Alien Enemies Act back in March, to people who were assumed or presumed to be gang members, but never actually had that due process in court. Now the government may have to either bring them back to the United States so that they can have that due process, or have some type of comparable, by video or something else where they do have their day in court. And so it seems like it's more costly to just, do things the right way from the beginning.
Well, it's interesting because there have been some people, not all, but some people have been assuming that because the Supreme Court, at least, is tilted towards the conservative side, that all the president had to do was get some of these cases to that court and be okay. But I guess that's not always the case. I mean, how might that impact things?
Right. I think that it's not always the case, and it really will depend on the way that some of the laws are written. Some of the justices may be very, textualists, and so it is hard to bend some of the statutes into a way that this administration wants to use it. And so that will be something that we will have to see how that goes.
Okay, bigger picture, how do you expect the administration to handle its immigration crackdown next year in 2026? All signs seem to be pointing to the fact that there's not going to be any slowdown. There's been more funding put in place, $170 billion in additional funding for ICE and Border Patrol. So they're going to stay at it, it seems. Here's Tom Homan speaking about this recently. Kind of ain't seen nothing yet is Homan's message.
In less than a year since President Trump's been in the Oval Office, we're in the year about 650,000 deportation, which blows any record out of the water. So he's already beat every record there when it comes to deportation. Well, get this. While Pam Bondi is suing the Department of the sanctuary cities, once we beat the sanctuary cities, once we bring all 10,000 new agents on the ground, you ain't seen nothing yet.
There you go. It keeps someone like you busy, I would think. What do you expect?
I expect that it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. We've seen them also offer more money for people to voluntarily return to their home countries. That amount now is up to $3,000, which was $1,000 a few months ago. And today I was actually in immigration court, and we had prosecutors from other courts come in because judges were not on the bench. And so now one judge had to hear all of these new cases added to her calendar. This is not sustainable for a long amount of time. And although this administration is going to keep moving forward, at some point, the ICE officers, the agents, the judges, the federal courts who are hearing all these habeas cases, something is going to break at some point.
What do you mean by that? What would that look like?
People resigning. We see a lot of judges either resigning, being fired because of the decisions that they're making. If it's not friendly to this administration, they are firing them. There's a lot of lawsuits going on because of that. And so the more that people leave the system, the less people are there to replace them. So then what happens? We're just going to be left with a bigger backlog in the end.
All right, Veronica, good to have you on. We'll follow all these issues from all sides, as we always do. Veronica Cardenas.